The story began with two families parting ways. Amidst the farewell, a young boy and girl stood together, their hands barely touching as the girl prepared to leave. Tears welled in her eyes as she thanked the boy for always protecting her. Though she was crying, her voice carried determination. She promised that once she left, she would devote herself to becoming a powerful sorceress. She swore they would meet again someday. The boy, though visibly saddened, simply nodded and shook her hand in silent agreement. Years passed. Now grown, Morihito found himself confronted by a group of delinquent teenagers on the street. One of them, a boy named Momota, shouted that Morihito's actions from a few days earlier wouldn't be forgotten. Morihito, confused and uninterested, asked who they even were. Offended, the group introduced themselves and reminded him of the incident, how they had been bullying a student, and Morihito had stepped in to stop them. In doing so, however, he had humiliated them, fighting back with such force that it left them bitter and embarrassed. They lunged at him, but Morihito easily dodged their attacks. It was clear he was stronger and faster, though he made no effort to strike back. He seemed to restrain himself deliberately, unwilling to hurt them. Still, Momota eventually managed to land a hit. Later, at home, Morihito's father questioned him sternly. He wanted to know why Morihito had allowed himself to be hit when he clearly had the power to win. Morihito calmly explained that Momota had once been injured badly by him in the past. He had deliberately let Momota hit him this time, believing it was the safest and most peaceful way to resolve the conflict. His father didn't accept the reasoning so easily. He reminded Morihito that the past was the past, and that he had been trained to control his strength. Morihito defended his choice, stating that if he had retaliated, the situation might have escalated further. This way, he believed, he got rid of them without unnecessary violence. As they sat down to eat, his father changed the subject. He asked Morihito if he remembered the young witch girl he had said goodbye to all those years ago. Morihito was taken aback. He hadn't thought about her in years, but the memories came rushing back, memories filled with misadventures, injuries, and her clumsy presence. He recalled how she had announced in 4th grade that she would go to witch school to learn magic. His father informed him that she had completed her training and was returning soon. Even more surprisingly, she had chosen Morihito to be her guardian. The news shocked him so much that he accidentally spilled his food on his father. His father, trying to remain calm, explained the reasoning. Normally, witches were protected by animal guardians, but some of those guardians had once absorbed enough magical energy to take human form. Over time, they married humans and gave rise to a unique bloodline known as the Wraith lineage. Morihito and his father were descendants of that very lineage. Because of this heritage, their family had long held a pact with the witches to serve as their guardians. Morihito was outraged. He made it clear that he didn't want to be bound by such arrangements. He snapped at his father, saying he wanted no part of it and suggested his father become her guardian instead. But his father explained that he couldn't. He was leaving for an important work trip the next day. With a sigh, Morihito calmed down and returned to his meal. His father continued, revealing that the girl Nico would be staying in the city for personal reasons and that she and Morihito would be living together. Upon hearing this, Morihito was so shocked that he once again spilled food on his father, who accused him of doing it on purpose this time. That night, Morihito sat in his room, lost in thought. He remembered Nico as a clumsy little girl who couldn't even pronounce his name correctly. She had always called him Moi. He wondered how much she had changed. Meanwhile, Nico was on her way back to the city, filled with excitement. She smiled to herself, thinking about how happy she was to return and hoping that Morihito was doing well. Back in Morihito's room, his reflections were interrupted by a loud crash. The window shattered, and Nico fell clumsily into the room. Morihito, startled, initially mistook her for a thief. She quickly apologized, explaining that she had lost her balance. As she stood up and brushed herself off, she introduced herself as Moi, just like she used to. Morihito was left speechless, staring in disbelief at how much she had changed. She smiled and reminded him that she had kept her promise. They had met again. Moi and Nico shared a warm moment after reuniting. But before it could settle, Nico abruptly interrupted the calm by insisting they clean the room immediately. As they worked, Morihito, still adjusting to calling her by the nickname Moi, remarked with disbelief that she had already caused trouble the moment she arrived, smashing a window on entry. Nico blushed, clearly embarrassed, and tried to assist, but he gently insisted she rest instead. He handed her some cookies, suggesting she take a break. While eating, Nico watched him quietly. She thought to herself how much Morihito had grown. He was undeniably handsome now, but at his core, he was still as blunt and honest as ever. Her mind began to wander into daydreams until Morihito's voice broke through, telling her that, although everything had happened suddenly, he was confident they could work through it. Nico apologized, explaining that none of this had been her decision. Her mother had arranged everything. He reassured her that it wasn't a big deal, reminding her that they had a pact to uphold. The most urgent matter, he added, was simply getting the window fixed. Nico then offered to repair the window with magic. When Morihito skeptically asked if she was serious, she replied confidently, reminding him that she was a witch. After all, she explained that the spell required a medium and object with emotional value to the owner. When Morihito asked what exactly a medium was, she clarified that it had to be something precious to him. He handed her his favorite cup, believing it would suffice. Nico smiled, saying it was perfect, and began to perform the spell. Morihito watched in astonishment as the shattered glass slowly reassembled itself until the sound of something breaking caught his attention. He turned his head and was stunned to see his cup now lying in pieces. Nico, flustered, explained that the medium used to restore something had to absorb the emotional burden of the broken item, and in doing so, it often broke itself. The magic, she said, worked through emotional transference. Furious, Morihito scolded her, saying she should have warned him beforehand, especially since that cup meant a great deal to him. Nico apologized earnestly, admitting she should have used something of her own. She confessed she was still too dependent on him, just like when they were children. Morihito, calming down, told her that she had changed, and besides, the important thing was that the window was fixed. Despite the cost, the magic was undeniably impressive. He then admitted that at first, he hadn't even recognized her, which made Nico visibly delighted. She eagerly offered to show him more spells, but he declined. Undeterred, she insisted, claiming she could demonstrate one that turned anything into a flat sheet of paper. Morihito, still irritated about the broken cup, told her he didn't want to see another spell anytime soon. Nico dismissed his concern, saying the cup would eventually return to its original form. Before he could stop her, she cast the spell on herself. To Morihito's horror, Nico flattened like a sheet of paper and was swept up by a gust of wind, flying out of the window. Morihito stared in disbelief. She hadn't changed at all, still reckless and impulsive. He rushed after her, trying several times to catch her midair but failing. Eventually, she got stuck in a narrow corridor, wedged between the walls. Morihito, realizing he couldn't reach her by hand, told her to wait while he fetched a broom to pull her out. Inside the corridor, Nico called out in panic, saying the spell was about to wear off. If she didn't get out in time, she warned, she might remain permanently flat. Suddenly, Momota appeared outside, confused to see Morihito standing near his house. He asked if Morihito had come looking for revenge. Morihito, desperate and breathless, responded sarcastically, saying that what he really needed was a vacuum cleaner. This was an emergency. Momota scoffed and accused him of trying to start a fight again. In that tense moment, Morihito's mind flashed back to their childhood, the time Momota had broken his arm with a punch, followed by a brutal beating in front of Nico, who hadn't stepped in to help, despite having the strength. Later, his father had told him that he had acted correctly by not retaliating. When Morihito asked why they had the strength of ghouls, his father explained that their power came with responsibility, and it had to be trained and mastered. True strength, he had said, came from restraint and integrity. Now, in the present, Morihito clenched his fists, furious. Momota stepped back, intimidated, thinking Morihito might actually attack him. But instead, Morihito turned and unleashed his strength not at Momota, but at the wall. With one mighty blow, he broke it open, and managed to pull Nico out safely. At that exact moment, she returned to her normal form. Momota stared at her, stunned, clearly recognizing her. Nico smiled cheerfully and greeted him with a playful hello, grassfish, completely unaware of or indifferent to his hostility. Momota's expression twisted with rage. He shouted that someone had to fix his wall or else he wouldn't let them off the hook. Morihito asked Nico if she could repair it, and she replied that she could, but as before, she would need something valuable from the wall's owner. Morihito smirked and decided to use a handful of Momota's hair as the magical medium. The spell worked perfectly. The wall was restored. Momota, however, was left bald and bewildered. With the situation resolved, Morihito and Nico walked away together. Nico apologized once more for the chaos, asking whether using Momota's hair had been a mistake. Morihito shook his head and reassured her that things were even now. She smiled in agreement, and they continued on their way. Everything had ended well, and they were about to head home when Nico suddenly stopped and said she wanted to ask a favor. It turned out that she wanted to buy clothes, lots of them. Moi ended up carrying the heavy bags, struggling under the weight, and wondering how much she had actually bought. As he staggered under the load, he muttered about how it felt like his arm was going to break. Nico laughed and told him not to complain, reminding him that he was a strong ghoul. Then, with a teasing smile, she said she would cast a spell to help him. Nico chanted softly, and a moment later, Moi was surprised to find that the bags felt almost weightless. Amazed, he told her that her magic was incredible and extremely useful. Hearing this made Nico beam with happiness. As they continued walking, Moi couldn't help but wonder whether Nico was truly ready to reveal to the entire town that she was a witch. It would certainly attract unwanted attention and danger. When he voiced his concern, Nico asked him what he expected her to do, stay locked up at home forever. Moi said that might actually be a safer option. She acknowledged his point but explained that witches were bound by a rule, they had to help people. Besides, she added, spells from novice witches like herself were often unstable. Engaging with people and using her magic in real situations was the only way she could improve and prevent herself from slipping into dark magic due to isolation. Moi agreed, saying it would be better for her to interact with others while still using her magic cautiously. Nico nodded, understanding that it would be hard for him, but to her, it was part of completing her training. One day, she hoped to become a powerful witch who could truly help others. Hearing this, Moi smiled. He thought her dream was beautiful and felt a deep desire to help her achieve it. So he looked at her and said he would be her guardian and help her with whatever she needed. Nico was stunned by his declaration. She began wondering how she should behave if the two of them ended up dating. Suddenly, a loud commotion interrupted their thoughts. A fire had broken out in one of the towers nearby, and a woman was calling desperately for help. Nico immediately decided to assist, but Moi tried to stop her, warning that it would be dangerous, especially with so many people around. Nico reminded him of what she had said earlier, that she wanted to use her magic to help others. Without hesitation, she pulled out her flying broom. Seeing her determination, Moi changed his mind and decided to support her. He instructed Nico to fly on her broom while he would go in and rescue the woman. They began executing their rescue plan amidst the crowd's astonishment. Moi asked the woman to toss some belongings to them, and when she did, the weight nearly made them fall. Quick thinking, Nico cast her lightness spell again, lightening the load and saving them just in time. However, something unusual happened. The spell appeared to affect Moi's mood. He began saying odd, overly cheerful things. It dawned on them that the spell didn't just reduce weight, it also lifted a person's emotional state, making them unnaturally giddy. The rescued woman stared in disbelief, asking how they were flying as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Moi and Nico tried to explain, but as they were midair, the effects of the spell began to fade. They started descending rapidly, though they managed to land safely just in time. The woman tearfully thanked them for saving her life. Then Nico suddenly remembered they had forgotten their bags. After saying goodbye to the stunned woman, the two of them flew back to retrieve their things. Later that evening, Nico and Moi finally returned home, completely worn out. The items now felt even heavier than before. Nico checked her spellbook and discovered that the likeness spell had side effects, which had affected both of them and led to their earlier collapse. Frustrated, they groaned about how the day had spiraled out of control with so many unexpected incidents. Eventually, they began getting ready for bed. Nico told Moi that their new life would officially begin the next day and said she hoped he would take good care of her. Moi replied gruffly that she shouldn't say weird things and told her to go sleep in her own room. Smiling, Nico agreed. Before heading to bed, she thanked him for everything he had done that day, especially for controlling his power so well. She commented that it must have taken a lot of training. Moi confirmed it quietly, but her words triggered a memory. He suddenly recalled something his father had once said, that a great disaster would befall Nico within the year. Startled by the memory, Moi had asked his father how he could be sure. His father explained that Nico's own father had been a seer, someone who could see into the future, but that even he didn't know the exact nature of the threat. Now, lying in bed, Moi realized that in order to survive whatever was coming, Nico would need a guardian. He stared thoughtfully at her as she looked back at him, unaware of the storm that lay ahead. Her eyes filled with warmth and affection. The next morning, Nico approached Mai and asked how he felt after their first day living together. He replied coldly that it was nothing and reminded her she was supposed to get dressed and come downstairs, not barge into his room uninvited. Nico, still a little dazed, thought to herself how surreal it was to be living under the same roof.